So today, let's take a look at this Echo 58 volt string trimmer, and I bought this off Facebook Marketplace. I paid $15 for it as is, and we don't know if it runs or not. This is a CPH58V power head version. It did not come with a battery. It didn't have this trimmer head. Someone must have had a brush cutter head on it, because you can tell all this was put back on it before they sold it. One reason I was interested in this is I did have the battery. I repaired this battery a few years ago and have a video on it if you're interested. So I already had a 58 volt battery to put in it, and we can test it out. And that does not sound good right here in this area. We can test here to make sure the gearbox is okay. Just take a Allen key here, and I'm going to stick it in the slot that you would use to hold it in place. Let's see if we can hear where the sound's coming from. It's definitely more towards the power head. So I believe all this part and the gearbox is fine. Definitely sounds more like the problem is in this area here with a coupling of some type. Take this spacer off before I lose it. So we can definitely take this attachment apart and make sure it's not slipping here in the middle. This little plunger is actually locked down and won't pull out. We'll just unscrew it for now. I'll look at that later. And yeah, the square drive on the shaft here for the string trimmer attachment is in good shape. Hopefully you can see it on camera. And the part it couples to here on the receiving end, it looks fine as well. I'll show a close-up of this later because it probably is not showing up on camera very well. Yeah, definitely sounds rough here in the power head. Don't have a spring here to assist on removing the battery with the Echo. It makes it a little more difficult to take the battery out. I'm going to go ahead and remove all 6 T25 Torx around the edge of the battery housing. I think I'm going to go ahead and remove the 3 inside as well, which actually holds the battery carriage and like the mounting box together. So Echo did actually think about mounting it on the wall, but they didn't add a spring to assist with the pack removal. And I did remove a tie wrap here. I'll show it later. It was preventing the camera from seeing, so I went ahead and removed it before I started back filming. So we do have to remove our controller. These are T20. So T20 and T25 Torx is what you'll need for this Echo 58 volt power head. Just going to unplug everything from the controller here and the brushless motor. Also the wiring that goes out to our handle, our controls. So this is the tie wrap. Just had one tie wrap on it, by the way. I just snipped it off. But this is what our battery carriage and box and controller look like. It is totally potted with the epoxy resin, so it's not repairable. So it's good that that actually works well. I'm going to go around here and remove the screws from the motor shroud or cover. It does separate out like so. And we just had the screws around. It was 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6. 6 screws there. And we can see the motor. I'll give you a close-up picture here as well. So we can tell some moisture did get into this unit. So the bearing itself might be a little bit dry or rough. T25 here as well to take the housing off. We want to pull gently so we don't pull the connector off the wires. Try to line it up on camera so you can see there. Just pull the wire out like so. So this is what the little coupler, or I believe they're calling the pinion, kind of an odd name to me, but I think they're calling this the pinion. It is a centered little coupler and it looks in good condition. Some different T25 bolts here to remove the motor mounting block. And there we go. There's our BODC. Put our screws aside here. They are different. The bearing actually feels good, but it just sounds a little dry. So it looks like the 6000 ZZ will be a good replacement for this. I don't have any on hand, but here's 2 examples from Amazon, then of course eBay. that does have the dual shield bearing. This is a 6000Z, it looks like. So it's just shielded on one side, so moisture probably did ingress from the back side, and the bearing is good at this time, but it does sound a little bit dry. We see our 3-phase connection and our Hall sensors for feedback. Looks like a very well made motor, and we'll look it up later, but it's probably a fairly expensive part, so good that that's all working pretty decent. Okay, so I'll show you here. As we could imagine, the shaft is what actually was eaten up, and I'll give you an up close picture here, but it totally rounded the square part of this shaft. So the shaft is done. Going to go ahead and take this receiving coupler off, and we'll look at this a little bit closer. Still T25 here. I'll give you an up close look here at the receiving side, and the square is in really good shape. It's just got your line up kind of funnel here, and then it goes into the square receiver. It's in good shape. So one thing I can do here without ordering any parts is I can see how much shaft we have. It's going to be roughly 3/4 of an inch. So not quite 3/4. I'll probably take about 3/4 off here. So yep, if I take the tube off just behind where the line-up hole is, then I should be able to shorten the shaft. I got my big tubing cutters if I need them, but I figure most people are going to have these smaller size, so being aluminum, I better to do the job just fine. And these rotary pipe cutters are the best way to cut something like this to soft and it has a shaft or something internal. And there we go. So now that we have the tubing cut, we will have to come back and drill a hole. So that hole is going to be roughly, let's see, go to metric here. It's going to be roughly 15 millimeters back, and we'll mark on the side where to put it at. But first we have to knock back this little spring washer. Hopefully you can see it here in the detail. It's a little spring-loaded tooth washer that I have to drive back to let the shaft stick out the other end, roughly 3/4 of an inch. So there we go. It slid back pretty good. Then it comes to a stopping point. That's going to give me just enough room here to cut off this rounded part of the shaft. I'm just going to take off maybe a couple millimeters less on shaft length to make sure our shaft is plenty long enough. And I'm just going to use a cutoff wheel on my grinder. And just like that, we're back to a square shaft. The more I thought about it, I actually had the perfect template here for marking where to drill the hole. If I just run this screw in with it on there properly, back and forth, I bet that, well, let me back it back off here. That's going to be a nice center punch spot there to drill. Just going to drill a hole about the same size that was already there. Knock out some of the shavings. Of course, we're going to have to clean up the hole a little bit. As well as the shaft on the other side. Make sure we take all the rough edges off. Should slide on just fine. And this centered pinion is in really good shape. Of course, the shaft is your softer metal here, and that's what's going to wear out first. So what we did is cut this off just a couple millimeters shorter than the tube itself. And that got it back to the square, and it's enough square to reach back in the pinion. So, and there's supposed to be a spring inside of the pinion as well to keep the shaft from moving back and forth so easily. But you can just see how round that is and why that was slipping and making so much noise. And you got to wonder if all these won't have the same issue, or maybe because they put a brush cutter on this power head, it may have wore it more. It's hard to say. But let me know in the comments below if you're having similar issues with the same model. And I do want to take time to mention here that you can still buy the upper boom, the shaft assembly, but it is obsolete. I will share here on a few places where you can see it. E-Replacements, for example, shows it. I'm pretty sure this tube is going to be number 24 on the breakdown here, and they're calling 24 the upper boom. And as you see here, E-Replacements has it discontinued and not available. But it would only be about $19, so if you can find it, it might be a good option for you. You see the spring washer up here as well. If you need one, it's still available for now. Well, at least one is. And just out of curiosity, the motor and pinion assembly is almost $100, and it is one available. The motor housing is actually very reasonable. If something cracks with that, $12, that's pretty good. And also out of curiosity, the circuit board and battery carriage part, just the carriage itself, not the mounting box, is almost $76. The battery mounting box is only $6.60. We'll take a quick look at wing guards. It shows $23.99 for the same part number, the boom. It just shows in stock, or it don't show how many at this time. And parts tree shows one left at $22.99 for the upper boom assembly. So that is an option, and if they're not available, then maybe this will be an option. This really didn't take long at all to do, and you got to take it all apart to put new boom assembly as well, and your handle and controls and all have to be swapped out also. So whatever you think works best for you and what's available. So yeah, I think this is all going to work out just fine. Going to go ahead and put the motor back in the housing. The bearing does feel good. It's just a little dry. I might have to order some replacements and swap it out eventually. Hopefully sharing that number with you will help you. If yours is having trouble, you can go ahead and order one as cheap as they are and have it when you take yours apart. I didn't have the luxury at this time, didn't have it available. So Echo does have the 56 volt platform out now, so evidently TTI's license ran out to produce Echo battery electric equipment. So now Echo is doing the 56 volt. I'm uncertain if Echo is doing it themselves or they have another third party doing it. Not real sure at this time, but their platform has definitely changed. And by the way, 58 volt, 56 volt is the same thing. It's just a play on words, really. Are you looking at like 4.15 volt per cell times 14? Or are you looking at 4 volts times 14? Which that's what most 56 volt platform does, right? You got 14S or 14 cells, and they're just saying around 4 volts. So 14 times 4, 56 volts. Where TTI and the Echo thing, they tried to go, 4.15, which is about what the cells do charge up to be fair. That's kind of like the max battery voltage. But some people think you got a little edge with the 58 volt over the 56 volt, and it's truly the same design as far as number of cells and voltage and output. Just going to connect all the wires back up here, and we had the motor and the feedback cable. We had the cable coming from the handle and the throttle control, speed control selector. I can go ahead and put the bolts into the battery carriage and box to make sure they're lined up. And then go around and put our 6 around the outside edge. Let's try it out. That does sound tremendously better. I did free up this little spring pin. It does work now to help lock it in position. We'll tighten it down. This is with the slower speed selected. I do have to order a trimmer head for it. So back now I do have the push and load style trimmer head. It's one of my favorites around my house because I don't have a tremendous amount of trimming to do, and I try to stay away from fences and walls and things of that nature to eat up line. If you do use a tremendous amount of line, then you will definitely still want a wind up bump head, but I really do enjoy these universal push to load, and usually don't go through no more than 1 or 2 pieces of string trim my yard. So of course these come as universal. You got to pick the right nut, or in some cases bolt, to fit your trimmer. It comes with a few pieces of string and instructions, as well as a lot of different miscellaneous specialty bolts and washers. And you do not remove the tri-head screw in the center here. From the factory, it's already ready to open up and put either the correct bolt or nut, in our case, in the head. And I already have it over here, and I set it aside to let you know the threads on this one is M10 by 1.25, and it is a left hand thread. So this is definitely a specialty nut. We just drop it in like so. And again, this is a metric M10 1.25 thread pitch. And I really just realized that it has a line cutter built into the head now, and I use these type heads a good bit, but that's new to me. That's neat. We'll see how that works a little later. So we'll put this together. We got the 4 T20 Torx screws included. It does have the little L Torx wrench with it, but to speed up for video, I'm going to use my driver to put this together right quick. Just the 4 screws, and we're ready to thread it on. Now some trimmers may need this spacer. We don't need the spacer on ours. We already got this spline spacer here. So we just need to hold it and spin it on counterclockwise. There we go. Feels good. Go ahead and grab a piece of the pre-cut string. Probably going to be about the right length, honestly, for our trimmer. Yep, that's pretty close. Let's see if I can clear my workbench off here. Pretty good. So let's try out that line cutter. You just push it in. Wow, that works pretty good. Try this other line I like to use a lot. Awesome. That's a neat idea to incorporate that in there. Works really well. I like it. So I hope you found this video helpful today. If you did, please like, share, and subscribe. I'll have some links down in the video description for the head that I used, as well as some other tools and interesting items that I find very helpful on my workbench. And any link you click on helps support the channel, and I greatly appreciate that. So thanks so much for watching, and God bless.